Ladies and gents, today Unity, one of the world's biggest game engines, became the game development community's punching bag, and for very good reasons. Recently we've been talking a lot about cashing out good faith in bad will, and well, today is more of the same, except this is something on a scale I have never quite seen. It's no secret that the indie community when it comes to game development has been hit the hardest in recent years. Between Steam having a 30% fee on all sales, and publishers just nickel and diming studios for every little penny that they've got, well, it's no wonder that this is something we're once again talking about, but on a much bigger scale. Now yesterday, Unity posted something on their forums listing new changes to their business model, and this includes the use of... I actually can't believe I'm about to say this. In fact, I just want to point out that I thought this was a Reddit troll post, and I had to check that it was real. They are now planning to not charge you a fee based on your total profits from games made within their engine, like Unreal Engine currently do. They are going to charge you per install of your game. Now you, the viewer, an intellectual, has probably just ran about 7 scenarios through your head on why this is an absolutely awful idea. But don't worry, it gets so much worse. Now, they've got lots of different tiers for their fees, but we're going to be talking about the first one as this affects the most people. This is the category most people fall into, including indie games. If your game has over $200,000 revenue in the last year and over 200,000 total lifetime game installs, you are going to pay 20 cents per game install. Not per purchase, not per game sale, per game install. This means that if you were a game developer and I purchased your game and I installed it on 2 computers and a laptop, after purchasing it once, you are charged 60 cents. This is the basis of so many problems with this idea that I can't even list all of them. I am coming up with new scenarios where this is a terrible idea, basically hour by hour. Now, something to note is that if you do fall into that category of $200,000 over the last year and 200,000 lifetime installs, well, that means you're going to be paying $40,000 a year to Unity. Once you take into account that, plus Steam fees, publishing fees and all that, you're realising your money is slowly slipping away. But let's forget about Steam fees for a minute. Let's forget about publishing fees, because this total would be the total money after that anyway. So let's say you've made $200,000 after Steam fees, after publishing fees, and you've got 200,000 sat there remaining. 40,000 of that immediately goes to Unity. That is disgusting. That is a 20% fee straight off the bat. And that is just assuming that everybody who has installed the game has installed it once. So there's a really funny scenario here that actually affects quite a few developers, which I find to be hilarious. This new business model actively punishes good indie games. Here's an example. Let's say that this theoretical game has still only made $200,000 in the last 12 months, but they've had 1 million installs, which has happened to quite a few games. Now, if you do the maths real quick in your head, that's $200,000 that they owe Unity, despite the fact that all they have made is $200,000. So yes, there is a scenario that if somebody gets 1,000,001 downloads on a game that has only made them $200,000, they lose money. And every install after that, they lose more money. I am in sheer disbelief that this was even conceptualized by Unity, passed on like down a chain of command, and everyone just went, yeah, that's fine. And it is now day 1 of being announced, and the user base have found all these issues. But it gets worse, so much worse. Unity actually issued a response to this, and it's not good either. We'll get to that in a bit though, so stay tuned. So, you've heard of review bombing games that you don't like. What about mass installing them, uninstalling them, and reinstalling them? Or, you know what? Just making a call to the API in the game file that notifies Unity of a game install. You can quite literally bleed a company dry that you don't like by infinitely reinstalling their game. Now, the next one to me is pretty hilarious. WebGL-based games. You know, those games on the web that you don't download. And you might be thinking, well, they're free of that, right? And somehow I have to say this again. It gets worse. Because according to Unity in a recent Q&A as of today, every time the WebGL files are initiated, aka you click on the web page that loads them, the dev will be charged 20 cents. And if you refresh that game and refresh the cache by thereby reinstalling the game on the browser temporarily, they get charged again. This is something I physically can't wrap my head around. Because with most companies and their just vile practices, I can at least see what they're trying to do with it, whether it's good or bad. I just can't see what they're trying to do here. I can't make heads or tails of it. All that I can see them doing is sandbagging their company for absolutely nothing other than some quick money. Because again, it gets worse. You may remember earlier this year when Unity got themselves into hot water because their CEO basically said, as an indie developer, if you're not adding microtransactions to your game, you're an idiot. So already you can see that they're wanting indie games to include microtransactions, especially the successful ones. Now, what does this new change push? Well, indie games that have got tons of installs that are really popular but are, in his words, undermonetized, you're going to be punished. You will be punished for making a good, down-to-earth game. And I'm sorry if I start to sound really upset in this video, but it's because I am. I don't even use Unity. I'm an Unreal boy through and through. But the fact that Unity is willing to target the entire indie community, just whip it out and treat them as a community cum dumpster, I am actually beyond words. And here's the thing. People are saying, oh, maybe they'll walk it back because this is clearly a terrible idea. I don't even care if they walk this back or try to walk this back and say, oh, well, we'll tackle this another time. We'll take the L. Because that's exactly it. They'll tackle it another time. And once you're locked into their ecosystem, you basically have to bend the knee to this. You've got no choice. There are currently games built in Unity that are very successful who are kind of screwed. In fact, Danny, a fellow game developer, posted on Twitter, he is the creator of Crab Game. Anyone got a cool 5 mil they can lend me? Because based on his installs and earnings, he's going to have to pay them a stupid amount of money. And I think it's safe to say the game hasn't made that much, because it's just a good game with very small microtransactions. So again, hitting the 200k threshold, but, install base is way bigger. So that's it. I'm going to jump over to the PC, and we're going to look at some of these ridiculous Q&A answers that they gave in response to this, because this doesn't even feel like a human answered these. There was no compassion in the answers to these questions, or any sort of, oh, we didn't realise that may be an issue. This is just a straight up, yeah, we know, we don't care, here's your answers.
Okay, so let's look into this, because this is where it gets really interesting. Question: how are you going to collect installs? Answer: we leverage our own proprietary data model. We believe it gives an accurate determination of the number of times the runtime is distributed for a given project. Now, it troubles me that they say, we believe it is accurate, because that really just goes to show that they don't want to be held liable for when it's not. And they also can't say it is accurate if they know it's not. Is software made in Unity going to be calling home to Unity whenever it's ran, even for enterprise licenses? We use a composite model for counting runtime installs that collects data from numerous sources. The Unity runtime fee will use data in compliance with GDPR and CCPA. The data being requested is aggregated and is being used for billing purposes. This is a really interesting question, because if users' data is being sent to Unity, well, that's kind of dodgy. Because you agree to certain information that is normally opt-in or opt-out with companies such as Blizzard, such as Jagex, such as all these other companies. You have a choice to not play their game if you don't want information in their hands. And that you're well within your right to do. You don't have a choice with this. This game just straight up sends your data to Unity, who you have not agreed to send your data to. So there is a big security risk here, and I agree with the asking of this question, because this is terrifying. This next one blew my mind. Just how sort of nonchalantly the answer was given, as if just, yeah, obviously. If a user reinstalls / re-downloads a game / changes their hardware, will that count as multiple installs? Answer: yes. The creator will need to pay for all future installs. The reason is that Unity doesn't receive end player information, just aggregate data. Basically saying, we don't know who the fuck's installed your game, we just know someone has. And we can't tell you who it is so that you can prove us right or wrong. We're just going to tell you that you owe us cash money. This is wrong on so many levels because there is no fact checking here. Unity can say, you owe us this much money and there are this many installs in this many locations. And you cannot go through and say, yes, that person installed. Okay, they reinstalled 4 times. That's fair. You cannot prove or disprove the fee and figure that you are given to pay to Unity. You're just expected to pay it. I mean, I don't even know. I'm lost for words, as you can probably tell. Next question doesn't get any better. If a game that made enough money to be over the threshold has a demo of the same game, do installs of the demo also induce a charge? Answer: if it's early access, beta, or a demo of the full game, then yes. If you can get from the demo to the full game, then yes. If it's not like a single level that can't upgrade, then no. Which isn't a demo in that case. All this is doing is discouraging any sort of free game or freemium game. This is begging the developers to just go full scorched earth with microtransactions so that they don't go bankrupt from making a good game. What a time to be alive. What a world to live in, where one of the world's biggest game engines are punishing their developers for making a good game. Anyway, onwards, because it gets so much more interesting. What is going to stop us from being charged for pirated copies of our games? And again, this is a fantastic question, and the answer just doesn't inspire any confidence. We do already have fraud detection practices in our ads technology, which is solving a similar problem. So we will leverage that know-how as a starting point, basically saying we don't have a way to stop that right now, but we'll come up with something. We recognise that users will have concerns about this, and we will make available a process for them to submit their concerns to our fraud compliance team. Basically, we're going to slap you with a charge that you can't prove whether it's pirated copies or not, and neither can we, apparently. So, eat shit, I guess? Because here's the thing. Unity games are quite easy to pirate. There is no ifs or buts about that. You can go on Pirate Bay. You can go on you can go on pirating sites and you can see all Unity games just everywhere. New ones, old ones, big ones, small ones. They're everywhere. So imagine this. Someone steals your game. So not only have you not gained the £10 that you would have for someone buying that game, for an example, you now have to pay 20 cents per person that steals your game. You are paying for someone to steal your game. Are we living in a Looney Tunes sketch right now? Because this is just abysmally nuts. I don't have words. You're probably noticing I'm running out of words to describe my just disappointment in this. Next up, I am bewildered at, because this one straight up kills web games. Web games will be gone that are made in Unity, completely gone. Does this affect WebGL and streamed games? Answer: games on all platforms are eligible for the fee, but will only incur costs if both the installs and revenue thresholds are crossed. Installs, which involves initialization of the runtime on a client, are counted on all platforms the same way, WebGL and streaming included. Oh my god. For those of you who don't know what that means, or that's too wordy and too techie, don't worry bro, I got you. This means that whenever the game is loaded on a web page, which is every time you go to play the game, it is counted as an install. What? I'm going to lead with a very good example here that many people will remember, and it's relevant to the last video. RuneScape used to be a web-based game. What happens is, when you click it, it loads the runtime environment in your browser, aka installing it according to Unity. Jagex would have had to have paid 20 cents per time that you open RuneScape. Yeah, sure, maybe they could probably afford to pay that, just about. But now think of the games that aren't charging membership, that aren't huge. If you have a web game that you occasionally open and play, you cost the developer of that 20 cents every time you play it. So to break even, they will have to somehow make 20 cents from you every time you interact with the game, every time you open a session of that game. And they don't see a problem with this. That's disgusting. This is, without a doubt, spitting in the face of a community that helped build their empire. And then the final question is the one that I could not believe was real. Are these fees going to apply to games which have been out for years already? If you met the requirement threshold 2 years ago, you'll start owing for any installs monthly from January, in theory. It says they'll use previous installs to determine threshold eligibility, and then you'll start owing them for the new ones. Yes, assuming the game is eligible in distributing the Unity runtime, then runtime fees will apply. We look at a game's lifetime installs to determine eligibility for the runtime fee. Then we bill the runtime fee based on all new installs that occur after January 1st, 2024. So if you have made a game in the past, you're not even free of this new egregious system. You've not got the option of saying, well, I'm not going to make any more games in Unity. We're backtracking this. You are getting railed whether you like it or not. Some people are in a position right now that, as this stands currently, as soon as we hit the 1st of January, they are going to have to shut their game down because it will cost them money. It will cost them money. How? I just can't wrap my head around this. It's so disappointing.
I normally don't encourage the boycotting of companies, but I am going to go out on a limb here. And I'm going to say that this is one time that I can remember in the last 5 years where a company truly does need to be boycotted. Where you guys, the developers that are working in their ecosystem, need to drop tools and walk away. I know it can be hard to do. I have moved game engines in the past and it's a daunting experience. But you are being trampled on right now by someone who knows that they can milk you for everything you've got. And in doing so, will force you to milk your players, causing this feedback loop of them making more and more money. You guys don't deserve this. None of the game development community do. This is bad for developers, which means it's even worse for the gamers. I urge anyone using Unity to move to another game engine. There are many other game engines. You're not limited to just moving to Unreal, although I would highly recommend it as a long-term user of it myself. Game engines like Godot have come a long way with their 3D tech now, and they are what I would call a viable game engine. Gamers and game developers alike deserve better than this, and I hope Unity gets what's coming for them.